Welcome to Brews and Boxing. I'm your host, Filthy Rich. Raider Live will be joining us later tonight, but he shows up for work all the time, on time. It's my man, Judge Jimmy James. How you doing, Judge?
Doing okay. A lot of big time fights happening all over the place. These have been the weeks for fights, so I am giddy as a schoolgirl.
Good for you. Me too, man. I saw baseball locked out the players. The owners have locked out the players. So I think my Yankees are going to be making moves right now. And without really, getting in too much trouble, I'm going to be popping open a brew with my 49ers bottle opener. Wink. All right.
Oh, that's mean. That's mean, man. God. What are you drinking? Are you breaking it open with a Minnesota beer too?
Something like that. All right, let's get started here. Crack open our brews. Ooh. Take a little drink.
Cheers, buddy.
And move on with the show. All right, brews and news time. A lot of boxing news to get into this week. Our first big story, this is one of the biggest stories probably across the world. Amir Khan and Kell Brook have been confirmed and have signed on the dotted line for February 19th. Amir Khan has been quoted for, Kell Brook is a very jealous person and makes me want to punch him in the face. Who knows more about faces than Amir Khan? I know Raider Live is dancing in his boxer shorts right now. James, what are your thoughts on Amir Khan fighting Kell Brook in February? Too late? Better late than never? What's going on?
Well, as you stated in previous shows on our fantasy fight card, that this was one of your top fantasy fights that you would want to see happen in the UK. And guess what, Rich? Guess Christmas is coming early for you because this is actually happening in the UK. I never thought this would happen at all. I'm actually extremely surprised that it's inked. A lot of talk back and forth, but surprisingly, I thought these guys were a lot older. I don't think it's going to be too little too late if this is a real fight. Brooks had time to heal. Obviously, Khan hadn't fought in the ring forever, so he had plenty of time to prep. But yeah, I think this is going to be. I don't know if it'll be the greatest show of skill for boxing fans, but if you want to talk about people who just trash talk back and forth and then are finally stepping into the ring to see who holds the crown at the end, I think it is going to be a fun one to watch, especially if it's packed. If they do something like Wembley Stadium and have it packed for like 80,000 people, oh man, I wouldn't want to be walking the streets if you're not a fan of one or the other, right? If you're a Brook fan and Khan wins, just run home or stay or hide or something, because it's Green Street hooligans probably is going to happen. So, but yeah, that's kind of what I got with that. I'm glad it's going to finally happen, and Merry Christmas, Rich.
Yeah, I guess I'm glad it's happening. Is it too little too late? Maybe not, but like, I think they lost money on this fight. Not to say they lost money, but had this fight happened 3 or 4 years ago, they would have gotten top dollar. I mean, pre-Terrence Crawford. Both these guys lost to Terrence Crawford since they've been jawing at each other. So the buildup is no longer there. It really is like this fantasy fight. It's probably going to headline, but where tickets could have been going for a few $100, maybe even like $1,000 range over there in the UK. I don't expect it to do as big money as it would have a few years ago. But I guess I am glad they're getting it on. I just hope, you can sign on the dotted line all you want, but Amir Khan breaks his hand or something. Who knows? Like, we saw like Kambosos and Lopez, how long that fight took to actually happen. Don't be surprised if this fight gets pushed back from February 19th to maybe spring or summer of 2022. Just my thoughts. And anything on that before we move on?
Do you think it's possible that Amir Khan can punch Kell Brook in the eye socket and break his eye socket, but still get knocked out at the exact same time from a shot to the jaw? Do you think you could have a moment where they both connect and then it's just both down at the same time? I feel like that could happen. I might predict that in the future.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, could it happen? Yeah, it probably could. But I think Kell Brook gets up. I think Amir Khan stays down. That's just my thought.
That's fair.
So, all right, on to story number 2. Bob Arum has just been quoted as saying Terrence Crawford hasn't proved to be a pay-per-view draw. We've lost money on every fight. So, James, what are your thoughts on Arum shooting at the mouth again about Terrence Crawford and losing money on pay-per-views?
Oh, look. One, not a big fan of Bob Arum. Maybe early in his life, not anymore, man. I'm not a big fan of you, right? I don't believe that this. Okay, accurate. Yes, what had like 130? I've seen 130,000 pay-per-view buys, 180,000 pay-per-view buys for Sean Porter the last fight. Well below the Canelo fight of 800,000, right? But either way, like it doesn't, I'm going to still stick to this. It doesn't promote well. He doesn't promote well. Crawford doesn't fight enough. He needs to get in more fights. He has more big name fights. He wins more big name fights. You have a bigger name. That's kind of how this game works. You can be undefeated forever, but a lot of people have undefeated records. It doesn't mean as much to a lot of people as it used to do, right? And that's just my opinion for this. I don't think a loss matters. I think a loss is actually more helpful for your career than anything. But I don't think Arum ever did justice by promoting Terrence Crawford. Never got him the fights he wanted. Never got him the fights he needed. And I'll probably touch base on this in the future. But I don't think it's really Bob Arum's problem anymore. So I don't know. I think Arum's just salty. He's got a giant, licking that salt lick with all the other deer, and he just needs to, go off to pasture, bud.
Yeah, I kind of agree with you on the whole, Bob Arum probably, he's past his time. He needs to hand the torch to Todd DeBuff, who I believe is the president of Top Rank. All that said, I think this is not a dig at Terrence Crawford necessarily. I think this is a shot to the fans who aren't buying pay-per-views. Bob Arum losing money on Terrence Crawford tells me that he thinks Terrence Crawford is worth the money, that he should be getting his money back, and that the fans aren't buying the pay-per-views. Now, some of it has to do with these undercards. These undercards are garbage. I don't know what other fighters are making at that weight, but these undercard fights on Top Rank aren't very good. The other problem we have is ESPN, I don't think does a good job of promoting Top Rank fights or fighters. It seems like every week there's a little league game on when I'm supposed to watch boxing. There's a college football game running into overtime and I'm supposed to watch boxing. Oh, well, if you want it, you got to turn to this other station or go to ESPN 2, get ESPN Plus, do all this nonsense. Forget all that. Pay-per-view is one thing. Maybe people aren't willing to spend the $80 to watch Terrence Crawford. But at the same time, maybe put the fight on a regular network. I can't remember the last time Lomachenko was on pay-per-view, but I catch the Lomachenko fights. I'd like to think he does well. I don't know what the deal is here. Obviously it's money because Bob Arum lost money, but I don't think this is a shot at Terrence Crawford. I think this is a shot at the fans and possibly even ESPN. What do you think?
Well, you made a good point with the undercard because the undercard was, I don't want to say it was trash, but it definitely wasn't. It didn't get me to, I wasn't buying it for the undercard at all. And that is definitely something I will buy a fight for. Even if I'm on the fence, if I know there's 3 good fights I'm going to watch, yeah, I'll probably buy it just because I know I'm going to get 3 good fights, not just to pay for one and then spend 6 hours. You spend $80 for 22 minutes. This ain't the UFC, man. I don't think so. We're watching this for hours and hours and hours because we love boxing. So made a good point there. But I guess I didn't think of it the other way. I mean, they do a good job at promoting Loma, and they do a good job of promoting Fury. So bigger names, bit different stuff. I guess it's that. But I mean, those are the only two top ranked names that I can think of that I can pull out besides Crawford, that actually get promotions. If you're not a hardcore fan, obviously more if I'm a hardcore fan, but I'm not going to go into that because we don't got time. So, but yeah, that's about what I think. But I don't think he's got to worry about now.
Well, I will say before we move on, I want to spend too much longer on this, but Fury and Lomachenko are from the UK, so the money might be a little bit different there. I don't know what Crawford asked for per fight. I believe he got $6 million for the Porter fight. But someone like Shakur Stevenson comes to mind. And I think these other Olympians, these amateurs all run to top rank first. So maybe they're not asking for a ton of money. And hey, Bob Arum can accommodate that. Terrence Crawford is a star. You got to pay top stars, top dollars, and $6 million doesn't seem like much. I don't know what the deal is. I really don't, but that's all I got. Should we move on?
We can move on.
All right. Our third final story for the night. Alexander Usyk is willing to fight Tyson Fury for the undisputed title should Anthony Joshua step aside. So my question for you, James, should Anthony Joshua step aside and let Alex Usyk and Tyson Fury get it on for the undisputed title?
This is a tough question, multifaceted, right? So Josh was going to have to ask himself, one, do you want to fight Fury? And two, maybe that's it. Actually, just one question. Do you want to fight Fury? I think that's what it boils down to. Because if you step aside, I'm personally think that even though we saw Usyk do fairly well against Anthony Joshua, I think Fury is a different breed. I think he has a style that is just not easily compatible, even though Usyk is pretty good at heavyweight. I think it's poor. I think that's a poor choice for Usyk. However, at the same time, you have a chance to become undisputed champion, heavyweight champion of the world. That ain't going to happen very often. If Tyson Fury is actually saying he would do it, then I don't know, man. I think I might, if I was Eddie Hearn, I might pay off Joshua to kind of go away. I know you just paid him a lot anyway before that Usyk fight for like a lifetime contract. Yeah. So poor choice, Eddie, but give him a little more cash, tell him to step out of the way, and then you might have a dream UK fight to put Joshua back on top. If he can actually fight Fury, if Fury would actually fight him, or maybe they have Fury retires after he becomes undisputed, and then at that point it's Joshua Usyk 2 for all the belts because they'd all be available, and that could be that path. But if I was Joshua, that's the question you have to ask: do you want to fight Fury at for all the titles? And I don't know if that's the right move. It's going to happen eventually, I would assume, but at this stage, I think I would let Usyk fight Fury, and then try to fight the winner. That's what I would do. Take as much time as you can to get your bearings and your ducks back in a row and go from there.
Yeah, I think all the fights can happen and should happen. Whether Joshua wants to step aside now or later or just doesn't want to step aside, I think Joshua and Usyk 2 is going to happen. I think Joshua and Fury will happen. I think Fury and Usyk is going to happen. And it all comes down to, where do you make the most money? Because if Joshua steps aside and Usyk beats Tyson Fury, then Fury Joshua, the dollars in that fight they're going to diminish. It's not going to be what it once was. And even right now, it's not going to be what it once was because Joshua has that second loss just recently to Usyk. Now, if Usyk beats Tyson, or if how do I put this? If Usyk and Joshua just have a rematch right off the bat. What does that leave for Tyson Fury if Joshua loses? Because if Joshua loses, now that money is gone too. So Usyk is like in charge of this division. It sure seems like. And to be honest, we're going to be doing our beginning of the year pound for pound rankings next month. I think Usyk beats all these guys, man. I think Usyk's probably the number one heavyweight in the world. I think Usyk should probably let Joshua and Tyson Fury make their money and let Usyk clean out the heavyweight division. Any thoughts before we move on with the rest of the show?
Interesting, but yeah, I'm curious to see how it's going to unfold, but definitely interesting points from both sides, and time will tell.
So I quickly, 2 out of these 3 guys, who do you want to see fight next? Any combination of the 2 of 3.
I mean, if I had my way, I would probably just, if you're talking about this, like just have Fury and Joshua fight. That's what I'd probably go with. I mean, why not?
100% agree. I think the 2 of them need to. We've learned something from our previous story, Amir Khan and Kell Brook. Don't let this wait too much longer. The money's there right now. It's not going to be there tomorrow. So yeah, I'd pick Joshua and Fury to be the next fight on our list. Anyways, that's it for Brews and News this week. Let's move on with the show. All right, Brews and Reviews time. We got 3 fights we saw over the past couple weeks. Most recently, this past Saturday, Teofimo Lopez fought George Kambosos. I'm not going to give away the results. I'm going to let James give away the results. Tell us what happened, James.
Well, surprisingly, I know I was definitely talking some trash in the previous, I don't know what, like months, years, however long it took to make this fight, right? To finally get going. And it actually exceeded expectations for me tenfold. I was extremely impressed with one fighter in this fight. But real quick, there's obviously a lot of crap talk back and forth. Smack talk from Lopez Sr., smack talk from Kambosos Sr., dad's going at it, all this sort of stuff, and really a lot of bad blood and a lot of what would you call it, stuff coming out at the beginning, right? Things were said, then the fight starts. Lopez kept saying he's going to knock him out in one round, 2 rounds, right? Super fast. And he came out firing just like that. And it sort of looked to rattle Kambosos a little bit, even though he was expecting it. And in that first round, Lopez was a little erratic, getting a little crazy, really wanted to end that fight, solidify his legacy a little bit more. And I don't remember how long it was into that round, but he got a little overzealous. Kambosos was cool, calm, and collect with his game plan and popped a straight right in Lopez's face and dropped him in the first round right on his butt. And from there, that changed the entire fight. And hopefully, I don't remember this. Hopefully you might be able to touch on this, Rich, but he said something that somebody else said. It might've been a Joe Louis fight or some, like Muhammad Ali against Joe Louis. They said something, I'm not 100% sure. Hopefully you can touch on this afterwards, but that's what Kambosos had going through his head this whole fight. But after that, Lopez did come out a little bit in the second and third, and Kambosos just took over. It was not a crazy dominating performance, but he stayed off the ropes. He kept Lopez in the middle of the ring. He was good with his ring generalship. He had good combinations, good counters. Did get caught a couple of times trading. But man, he did take some really good shots and showed that he has a really good chin. And Lopez just, I think he was overlooking him, was too hyped. I don't think he was ready to be, I don't think he was conditioned to the fact to go as long as he did. And Kambosos ended up taking quite a few of those rounds. and he did end up getting dropped, I think once, but either way, it was a Kambosos fight, and in the end, ended up being a split decision win for George Kambosos, and Lopez was dumbfounded by it. Couldn't believe it. Hijacked the interview, showed no class, no sportsmanship. I was appalled, to be honest with you. It was a terrible way to win. What a sore loser. But it was still a really good fight, super entertaining fight, and congrats to Kambosos. I guess congrats to Manny Pacquiao too, because he had like 300 rounds sparring with Kambosos, and I think if I look back at it, I can honestly see that paid off huge, because he mimicked some of the Pacquiao style as best he could, and it ended up paying off. So Kambosos wins, split decision, and congratulations.
Yeah, definitely. I don't recall what was said that you were referring to. I just don't recall right now. I don't know what it was. But we I think all of us picked Teofimo Lopez to win this fight when it was first announced. And as time went on, it was don't look past your opponent. And I think that's what it boiled down to. It seemed like Lopez had already decided he's moving up to 140, which in a sense to me says I am looking past my opponent. I'm looking at 140 already. That was a mistake. So now Kambosos probably has the bettors on his side now. The money's probably rolling in for Kambosos. Kambosos proved that skill can beat power, and that's what happened. It seemed like Teofimo Lopez was almost overpowering Kambosos, but Kambosos had the footwork and he had the head movement. He had the ring generalship. He did everything he was supposed to do, and he did it well. This was not a robbery. I thought Kambosos won this fight. I thought the right guy won this fight. You talk about the post-fight interview. They were booing Lopez, and I think someone said, oh, they're not booing him. They're booing the decision. No, they were booing Lopez and the attitude. I think this fight boiled down to the 11th round. It would have been like the last two rounds. And that 11th round, that was when Lopez had to like show something, step on the gas, do something. And it seemed like he was just waiting for Kambosos to slip up so he could nail Kambosos with one of his power right punches. And it just did not happen. Kambosos stayed busy the entire time. He tied up when he had to tie up. He did everything right. I gave that round to Kambosos. I gave round 12 to Kambosos. I thought Kambosos won this fight. Props to you. You're going to make a lot of money with all the names calling you out at this point. And speaking of names calling out at this point, what do you think's next for each guy?
Well, I mean, Kambosos obviously will probably fight Haney. Actually, no, I'm not even going to entertain that other part. He's going to fight Haney, and that's going to be undisputed champion at 135. That's what he's going to do next. As far as Lopez, he's going to move up. He's going to move up to 140. It's kind of what he said he should have done previously, and all this mumbo jumbo saying he was too weight trained and all that sort of stuff. But that's what I think he'll do. He'll move up to 140, and he wants a shot with Josh Taylor. I don't think he's going to get it at this point. Probably going to need to fight a fight or two there, but I think that's probably what happens with Lopez. And then real quick, I still don't remember what it was, but the big question was that Kambosos says is, how am I going to beat Lopez? And the quote, whatever the quote was that you're going to go out in the first round and knock him on his, and that's how you're going to win the fight. And that's exactly what he did. He changed the entire outcome and the entire scope of the fight. So again, thumbs up, man.
Yeah. Quickly, I got Lopez moving to 140. He's probably going to get the Taylor fight. I don't think there's bad terms with Top Rank. Top Rank can make that fight happen. Kambosos, I've said this one before. Lomachenko's cleaning up Lopez's scraps right now. He just fought Nakatani. He's got a fight with Comey coming up. I think it's Lomachenko, Kambosos next for Kambosos. Our second big fight this past weekend was Brandon Figueroa against Stephen Fulton. James, give us a lowdown. Give us anything.
I'll give you a little bit. This was actually the fight that I called was going to be the most entertaining fight out of the giant list that we had, excluding Alvarez and Crawford in the previous show. I think you might have also agreed with me at some point a little bit with this, and it definitely was an entertaining fight. I don't know if I would agree with what I stated before, but it was nonstop. A lot of action. It was a lot of press forward fighting. Which was actually, to be honest, a little surprising to me because I thought Figueroa would have done stuff a little bit different because of his size advantage and his reach advantage. But either way, it went all 12 and ended up being a majority decision. I thought it was going to be a draw. Ends up being a majority decision for Stephen Fulton. Again, Figueroa said some of the same stuff. Sore loser, hijacked his interview, but I didn't say that before. Lopez hijacked Kambosos' interview. Same thing happened here, which I couldn't believe it. I don't think I've seen that in the same night ever on two different shows. So it's interesting. A lot of people will probably say that Fulton lost the fight. I think Figueroa threw like 300 more punches, but I think his game plan was wrong. It was fighting on the inside, and I think Figueroa needed to take 2 steps back and then do exactly what he did. If he was 2 steps further away and did exactly what he did, I think he would have dropped Fulton earlier before 10, to be honest, with some of the shots he was making, but it just was not the outcome, right? So it was a nonstop fight, not as great as I thought it was going to be, but still definitely a good one. Whenever you fight to in a majority decision, that means it's obviously a very close fight.
Yeah, I think the judges got this one wrong. I thought Figueroa won the fight. I like your assessment, though. Had it been like 2 steps back, a game plan could have been more properly executed. Fulton looked like the professional boxer in there. He looked like he had been boxing for years, and he has a great amateur background. Figueroa looked a little sloppy at times, but that's how Figueroa has been fighting. That is how Brandon Figueroa kind of fights. He kind of just moves forward. He has awkward head movement. He just has an awkward stance. He goes left and right pretty fluently, but I really thought Figueroa won this fight. I wouldn't even be angry with a draw, but even I would look at a draw and go, look, I think Figueroa won. It's too bad, the whole hijacking stuff, because at this same point, I think Fulton was getting booed during the result, and Figueroa, in a sense, got cheered, and Fulton brought up the fact that this is your home crowd, blah, blah, blah. At the end of the day, I thought Figueroa won, and I guess I'll steal this one here. Figueroa's going to be moving up to 126. That's what's next for him. Fulton, I don't know what he's going to do at 122, but I'd like to see the two of them do this again like they kind of claimed they would. Any thoughts on what's next for either or both guys?
It's probably pretty accurate, man. I don't really, to be honest, not 100% engaged on what was next for either of these guys, but Figueroa is going to move up. Fulton probably going to defend his belt. So
yeah, these I think you just went through at the bar the ring of champions, so let's ignore that. There's probably tons of titles out there. All right, finally the big fight that was a couple weeks ago, Terrence Crawford and Sean Porter. I'm gonna just save this one for you again. Go right ahead, give us your thoughts.
Well, man, obviously waiting for it for a very long time, and glad it happened. Watched it, and to me, I don't think it disappointed to me, except for the outcome, sort of. But the ending was a little butch. But through the fight, I think it was a good fight. Porter came out. I thought Porter was doing pretty well against Crawford. It seemed like he was disrupting Crawford just like he should have with some inside fighting. I think he definitely had some. Porter didn't look as, I don't know if we'd call it as crisp as he normally would, but he didn't. He looked like he was not as unbalanced. How about that? He just looked a little unbalanced. But Crawford didn't look like he was super sharp either. For him, he was landing some punches here and there, but I think he was being pretty careful and pretty cautious. I think it was a little more careful and cautious than I was anticipating through most of the fight, to be honest. But eventually, the 10th round rolls around, and I don't remember if it was Bomac who came up to his corner, but they said to Bud, "You're losing on the cards." And he was like, "What? You're losing this fight." "What do you mean I'm losing this fight?" "I'm losing this fight?" "Yeah, you're losing this fight." "I'm losing this fight?" "Okay." Then he said, "Okay." 10th round rings, and he proceeds to knock Porter down twice in that round just because somebody said that he was losing that fight. Then unfortunately on that second knockdown, which didn't even seem like anything bad at all, Porter slams his fist on the ground, just upset that he was knocked down right for the second time. And out of nowhere, Kenny Porter calls the fight, throws the towel in on his son. No consultation, no damage. No, it was to me a very odd stoppage, and a very unfortunate stoppage, because to me it seemed like they had it was Porter's turn to turn it on at that point, and he didn't allow his son to do it. And real quick at the end of the fight, the reason in the post-fight interview in the ring when he said that, why did you stop the fight? And he said his son didn't prepare enough. And that's just, to me, it's just asinine. You were the trainer of your son. You're telling me he didn't prepare enough and you threw in the towel. It is just super, super weird. So it ends up being great for Terrence Crawford. TKO win. Exactly like, a lot of people thought it was going to happen. It's a great step up. I think it's a huge, what would you call it, moment in Crawford's career that he is now the real deal, right? This is now my argument piece for most people, I guess, except now people are going to say, well, he did in the corner and all blah, 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 blah. But either way, TKO in round 10, I think it was a really good fight. I am super excited to see whatever Crawford does next. And
yeah, I think Kenny Porter almost discredited Crawford by saying my son wasn't prepared. So now you got the skeptics that go, well, he fought a Porter, an unprepared Porter, an old Porter, or a Porter who actually retired half hour after the fight was over, announced his retirement. So Crawford fought an old Porter and a retired Porter, an untrained ring rust, whatever Porter, all these excuses. But let me tell you, what I saw in that fight was probably Crawford. I guess Crawford controlled almost the entire fight. Any round that could have been given to Porter, I could see Crawford actually winning that round too, just by his in-ring presence and absorbing punches. Porter looked to be the busier fighter, as he usually does most of his fights, but Crawford handled this one the way he was probably going to handle it. I don't know if anyone was really going to bet on Porter winning this fight. Yeah, disappointed with the corner. Really disappointed with that. I thought you got to let this one go 12 if you could. But what's done is done. We know what's next for Porter. It's probably going to be PBC commentating. I believe that, he was on one of those PBC shows that got canceled recently from the COVID, but he has a good future at ringside. What do you think is next for Crawford?
Well,
what do you want to see next for Crawford? Is it Spence? We've already talked about Amir Khan and Kell Brook. We talked about Joshua and Fury. Is Crawford Spence expired, or is that what you want next?
I'd probably watch that next. The big thing here is that at the end of a lot of stuff happened at the end of fights recently. And at the end of this fight, not just Porter retiring, but Crawford broke his ties with Top Rank on air next to Bob Arum. I'm not sure if Bob Arum even knew what was going on at that point, based on the look of his face. But yeah, I think that's probably what would happen next. That's the fight that I want to see. Errol Spence was at that fight ringside. Once the towel was thrown in, he kind of looked like, really? And then got up and dipped, because he knew for a fact he was going to get just jarred with questions about, hey, what are you fighting for? All that. I guarantee. He was like, I'm out, man. I want to go enjoy my night. But yeah, that's what I think is going to happen for Crawford. I just don't see anything else. Anything less than that is just not It's just not going to be worth it. So I think that's what he should do.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know if PBC is where Crawford's going to go. Maybe give Matchroom a shot, or even stay with Bob Arum. If Bob Arum's going to lose all this money, I don't know how other people are going to come up with it. So do what you got to do, but the Spence fight needs to happen now, just based on what we've seen in other divisions with other supposed rivalries. So that'll conclude our brews and reviews segment. Got nothing else. Let's carry on. All right, Filthy Five time. This is our inaugural Brews and Boxing Hall of Fame. What we did is compiled a ballot, and the way this ballot worked was we did a snake style like draft. Since James got the short end of the stick on the fantasy fight card, he got the number 1 pick. Raider Live got the 2nd pick. I got the 3rd and 4th. Back to Raider, James on the double, and so on, until each of us picked 5 guys with a total of 15 boxers. From there, we rank them 1 through 10, and in reverse order. At number 1, that guy gets 10 points. Number 2 gets 9, so on. If you have any questions, too bad we ain't answer them. We ain't gonna answer them, I should say. Let's get on with it. Anything you want me to cover before we put your hand down? Go.
Just pointing out that the top 5 are the ones that are going to make into the Hall of Fame this year.
Thanks, Dad. The top 5 are going to be making it in, but all these guys are worthy of. Most of them are already in the Hall of Fame. So let's get on with it. At number 5, with a total of 16 points, I had him at 6. Raider Live had him at 5. Judge Jimmy James had him at 6. Sam Langford. Raider, since you had him ranked higher, any thoughts on Sam Langford?
Well, I didn't know much about Sam Langford until we did our all-time pound for pound back last year. So the Boston Bone Crusher, the Boston Tar Baby, the Boston Terror, one of the best fighters ever, known by ESPN, the greatest fighter nobody ever knows. Just an amazing fighter. 313 fights, fought many times, like over 20 times a year sometimes, and stuff like that. More I learn, more I read about him, more I learn about him, the more I like him, and the more I think people, especially boxing fans, should learn about him. So you should go read up on him.
Any thoughts, James?
I do. I mean, this was back when there's only a real four classes, right? I'm pretty sure he was a champ in all the classes: lightweight, welterweight, middleweight, heavyweight. That's pretty amazing. 117 knockouts, 167 wins, fought for 24 years. He was a beast, 100%. And he probably still fought more, except he had to stop because of blindness. I think one of the most interesting things with Sam Langford was another heavyweight champ, Jack Dempsey, said that he doesn't fear any man except for one. I would not fight Sam Langford because he would flatten me. He said he was afraid of Sam Langford. So that alone right there should speak volumes to this man's boxing ability. So I think that's good that he's in the top 5 and he's going to make it in this year.
Yeah, the coolest thing about that. Oh, I'm sorry. The coolest thing about that going blind too. He won 3 or 4 fights while pretty much 90% blind too, and he ended up being completely blind by 43 years old. He lost most of his vision. He beat for the Mexican heavyweight title, almost completely blind. Just an amazing fighter, amazing skills. Go ahead, Rich.
So Sam Langford is my number 1 pound for pound guy, and Teddy Atlas also has him number 1 overall pound for pound. He never did win the world heavyweight title. He was famously ducked by Jack Johnson. So yeah, he went from lightweight all the way up to heavyweight, but did not win the heavyweight title, and is known as the greatest fighter to never win the heavyweight title. Let's move on to number 4. At number 4 with 18 points, I had him at 7. Raider had him at 3. Judge Jimmy James had him at 5. The Pittsburgh Windmill, Harry Greb. Raider, you had him at 3. Had him ranked the highest out of the 3 of us. What are your thoughts on Harry Greb?
I pull up my notes here. I didn't know you guys had Harry Greb down there, but another guy that had vision problems from from Germany. Fought Walker and Tunney. Very great fighter. He was 261 wins, 49 of those by knockout. Only lost 18 times, 19 draws. Just an amazing fighter. I believe he was the one that he became blind after one of his last fights. Is that correct? I get him mixed up sometimes. So why don't you take it here while I try to find my notes there, James?
Go ahead, James.
I pulled up the wrong one.
Yeah, he did. He died at 32 years old from botched surgery, I believe. I don't remember. I don't know where you spouted off that record, but he was, at least for what I have, he was 105-8, and he had 183 no decisions. I think he has the third most recorded boxing bouts in history. Only fought middleweight. But the interesting thing about Harry Greb was that he fought a lot of people that weren't in middleweight, probably why he had so many no decisions that were all the way up to heavyweight. So, I mean, one of the craziest stats for this guy was that he averaged in his career 23 fights a year. That's insane. So this is why I got Greb up in my list, because the Pittsburgh Windmill, he was definitely someone not to scoff at.
Well, as you pointed out too, in 1919, he fought 45 fights and went 45-0. The number of wins I got is because those included the newspaper decisions. Yeah. The newspapers would decide who the winner was. So he had 179 newspaper decisions / draws that happened from there. But 45-0, 45 fights in 1 year, and to win every one of them, that's just absolutely ridiculous. Was that 3-4 fights? It's like fighting pretty much almost once a week. That's incredible. I have that kind of stamina. Go ahead.
Rich, didn't you have a story about this guy?
Well, I can tell you with Harry Greb, he has the most wins out of every boxer in history. There's one, but even then, he's famously fought Mickey Walker, and I think it was after he defeated Walker in the ring, Walker called him out at the bar later that night. And I believe Harry Greb is taking off his jacket where Mickey Walker sucker punches him. These are all patrons who tell different sides of the story, but that's kind of what happened. And that's what, and that's why I had, spoiler alert, had Harry Greb just above Mickey Walker. Anything else before we move on to number 3?
Both of those fighters that we talked about are very, very worthy of a first ballot Hall of Fame in the Bruce.
Okay, let's go on to number 3. Thank you, Raider. At number 3, I had him at number 5. 23 points total. I had him at number 5. Raider Live had him at number 2. Judge Jimmy James had him at 3. Henry Armstrong. Raider, again, you had him ranked the highest out of all of us. Give me your thoughts on Henry Armstrong.
I seem to have everybody weighted up very high. Well, Henry Armstrong, he started out as a featherweight, moved all the way up to middleweight. Had 181 fights, 151 wins, over 100 by knockout. I believe it was 101 by knockout. Bert Sugar said he was the second greatest fighter of all time, and Bert Sugar is, knows his stuff. Obviously, knew his stuff. I should say. He's passed away from now, but he opened a nightclub afterwards too. After he retired, one of the few that actually survived after retiring. A lot of these guys that in the old days, died, seem to die pretty young or go blind. But a lot of wars, a lot of unbelievable fights. 22 losses over 183 fights. That's just incredible. James, I'm curious to hear what you have to say about some of his bigger fights.
Well, I mean, what's interesting about Henry Armstrong is that he, at one point, held 3 titles simultaneously in 3 different divisions. Almost had it in 4, but stuff doesn't work, right? So he won the featherweight in 37, the welterweight title in 6 months later, and then 3 months later after that, won the lightweight or the middleweight or the lightweight crown. Sorry. So that's pretty insane, even being back that far for it. I think one of his nicknames was Homicide Hank or Hurricane Hank. But he was just I guess he would call him a nonstop puncher. one of the most interesting stats that I read about Henry Armstrong was that he faced 17 world champions and he beat 15 of them. So 15-2 record for world championship fights is pretty good even to this day. So
he was that day's Canelo, going for all the belts and all the different weight classes. You know, almost got 4, almost about to a draw on that fight.
All right, so yeah, Henry Armstrong had 3 belts simultaneously in an 8-belt era. He had almost half the world titles going at that time. This was because Joe Louis was the heavyweight champion, and he was garnering all the attention, all the media attention, everything. And Armstrong's promoters were basically saying, we need to get you on the map, and this is what we're going to do. You're going to win belts in every division at the same time, and they're going to have no other choice but to talk about you. And that is Henry Armstrong's legacy right there. I think he is the only boxer with over 100 knockouts. So toast to you, Henry Armstrong. At number 2 with 26 points. This one was really tough because at one point we were tied, and I had to get the third one of us put in their notes. And at number 2 with 26 points, I had him ranked number 1. Raider had him ranked number 4. James had him ranked number 2. The greatest, Muhammad Ali. James, Muhammad Ali at number 2. What you got?
You had him at, where did you have him at?
I had him at 1.
Silly Rich. Yeah, I mean, what can you say, man? It's Muhammad Ali. For his time, he was unheard of, being a heavyweight boxer that could move like he did, could punch like he did with the power that he had. It just didn't happen. It was an anomaly of a combination, and he used it to his advantage on countless times, right? I mean, if anybody knows any name from boxing, it's probably Muhammad Ali, like 100%. So, I mean, I don't know if I have too much to say about it. I'm probably going to let him. I'm probably going to let you speak a lot about Ali if you got him at number 1, Rich. But yeah, I believe that he is a 100% guaranteed Hall of Famer, one of the greatest heavyweights to ever live.
Raider Live.
The coolest part about Muhammad Ali is he was the first person to be a worldwide celebrity. Basically, everyone in the world knew who Muhammad Ali was, and he used that for good too. Not just being the champion, but he was the first one to be a real entertainer, where people had to listen to him talk, listen to him do. In an era where, you know, Black Americans were, you know, discriminated against a lot, Muhammad Ali, being the most popular person in the world and using that to his advantage, was king. You know, obviously he lost several years of his career due to sitting out the Vietnam War, saying he's not going to go fight no Viet Cong. He's never seen one. He has no problem with Viet Cong. Another cool things about Muhammad Ali is his brain, the way he would figure out fighters on how to beat fighters. Obviously, the Rumble in the Jungle with the apparent loosening of the ropes, where the rope-a-dope came into play to kind of roll off a lot of Foreman's power. But another thing I learned about Ali, too, about the way he punched, he was one of the first guys that would twist his fists a lot when he would punch and he would snap. And what he would do is he'd try to cut you with it. He'd cut you with his fists at the same time. So he would like to open up a lot of cuts with that. And people just never seen speed at that level. And, you know, his opponents would just absolutely hate him because they'd, you know, get bashed in the media for so hard and so long. You know, Joe Frazier obviously had a lifelong hate with him. I think you told me, Rich, that they ended up making up, but there was something to do with their sisters or something like that. There was a story with their sisters between Joe Frazier and whatnot. But Muhammad Ali personally is my favorite fighter of all time. It was just sad that he lost a few years of his prime, you know, with the sitting out the war. And then I also feel bad that he fought probably too many fights, causes Parkinson's disease, you know, and, you know, he is unfortunately no longer with us. But Muhammad Ali was one of my favorite fighters to watch. Pairing up with Howard Cosell was always entertainment to watch. He's the Rock of the 60s. That's basically what it is. Filthy Rich. I want to hear some stories of yours, though.
I got nothing. All I know is that this is the Hall of Fame. When you talk about the most famous boxer, there is no one other than Muhammad Ali. You can post his picture anywhere. Little kids, old people, everyone's going to know who Muhammad Ali is. If the way basketball has Jerry West as the logo, if boxing had the logo, it would definitely be something of Muhammad Ali. Maybe his hands getting raised after the Phantom Punch versus Liston. Yeah, there's this is the Hall of Fame, not the Hall of Great, not the Hall of the Best. This is the Hall of Fame, and he is the most famous boxer, maybe the most famous athlete in the world of all time.
You can't have a Hall of Fame without Muhammad Ali as a first ballot Hall of Famer. It wouldn't be right. Cassius Clay. His mom gonna call him Clay. I'm gonna call him Clay.
At number 1, this kind of is obvious. 27 points. James and Raider both had him at number 1. I had him at number 4. It's Sugar Ray Robinson. James, why don't you lead us off here? Give us some thoughts on Sugar Ray Robinson.
Well, there's not too much to say if you know boxing and you're a big boxing fan. Sugar Ray Robinson was one of the best boxers ever. I have him at the best boxer ever, which is why I have him number 1 in this Hall of Fame thing, because I think he deserves to get in right away. He definitely moved through a couple of divisions in a weird era. I think there was one point he fought Willie Pep in a barn, which Willie Pep was like, what in the world is this? I've never heard of this guy. And then I don't think that ended well, but I mean, he literally beat all the top fighters of his era. Jake LaMotta, Henry Armstrong, Gallivan. One of the quotes that I remember the most about someone talking about him was Muhammad Ali saying that Sugar Ray Robinson is the king, the master, my idol. So right there, if that's coming out of Muhammad Ali's mouth, I can't not put him ahead of Muhammad Ali. So he was, if you can watch him, obviously this is some old time boxers, but he's the greatest.
Raider.
He's absolutely great. So I got a couple of quick stats for you here as well. I don't believe I just want to double check this here. Yeah, he was never knocked out. He started his career 40-0, lost a unanimous decision to Jake LaMotta, and then proceeded not to lose again until his 134th fight. So he went 130, was that 132? He had 2 draws in there too. So, and a no contest. So that is ridiculous to have 128 wins out of your first, or 131 wins out of your first 134 fights with only 1 loss. That is ridiculous. You can't have a Hall of Fame without Muhammad Ali. You can't have one without Sugar Ray. You just can't do it. And if he's not a first ballot Hall of Famer, I don't know who is. His wars are unbelievable. His length of his career is unbelievable. He didn't get most of his losses to the end of his career at the point. He had, as he was already 44 years of age, he lost, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of his last 10, 15 fights at 44 years of age. 5 of his losses came at 44 years of age. That is ridiculous. So, Rich, James, you got something to?
Yeah, James, what you got?
I have one last thing because I forgot about this. So his 1 loss in his first 130 fights or whatever was to LaMotta, right? Yep. He also went on to avenge that loss 5 times against LaMotta. So he beat LaMotta the next 5 times he fought them. So in your face, Jake.
Yeah, went 131-1. His 1 loss was to Jake LaMotta, giving up 15 pounds. That is unheard of. Gave up 15 pounds to Jake LaMotta. At the same time, he was coming off of a fight a week earlier, and I think he had a second fight 20-something days before. So that's 3 fights in 28 days. Something like that was the number. So that's the whole LaMotta. And, yeah, he beat LaMotta 5 out of 6 times. Even LaMotta said, I'm surprised I don't have cavities with as many times Sugar has beaten me. Something like that. Or it was diabetes, cavities, one of the two.
I do have one more quick story about him too that you brought up the last time, where he didn't want to fight Jimmy Doyle, the Jimmy Doyle story. Didn't you tell me that like he had a dream or something, or a premonition or something, that he was going to kill Jimmy Doyle and didn't want to fight him, and didn't die? Doyle actually ended up dying after they did fight or whatever. You told me that story once. I can't. Did I get most of it right?
Yeah, he went to a pastor and said he had a dream about killing this guy. He didn't want to fight him. The pastor said, "Don't worry about it. It was just a dream." Ended up killing Jimmy Doyle. I think it was in the 14th round of that fight. Yes.
Didn't that happen here in Minneapolis?
Yeah, that's what was. It happened at the Armory, I thought, too, wasn't it?
Yeah, maybe. I don't remember that. It could be. Could be. I wouldn't doubt it. You guys are the experts. I'm just sitting here hosting, pretending I know what
I just found out on my notes here, after Jimmy Doyle died, criminal charges were threatened against Sugar Ray in Cleveland, up to and including murder. But after learning that Jimmy Doyle was going to use the bout's money to buy his mother a house, Robinson gave Doyle's mother the money for the next 4 fights from his next 4 fights, so she could buy a home, which is pretty cool too. So the guy's got class on top of it, obviously.
Yeah. Pound for pound king. The reason why there's a pound for pound list is because of Sugar Ray Robinson. And he was also in that, I believe it was the Joe Louis era, where people knew Joe Louis was the best and all the heavyweights were the best. But if that Ray Robinson kid was a heavyweight, he'd have beat them all. So let's go down. The rest of this list. Guys who made the ballot but did not make this year's Hall of Fame. At number 6, with 14 points was Jack Johnson. I had him at number 3. Raider had it at number 6. James had him at number 10. Number 7, Joe Louis. Total of 11 points. I had him at number 2. James had him at number 9. Raider unranked. At number 8, Willie Pep. He had 8 points. Raider had him at number 10. James had him at number 4. I had him unranked. At number 9 was Archie Moore with a total of 6 points. Raider had him at number 8. James had him at number 8. I had him unranked. At number 10, we have a tie with 4 points. Manny Pacquiao. Raider had him at 7. And tied with him is Roberto Duran with 4 points. And James had him at number 7. Number 12, Mickey Walker. I'm the only one who had him ranked. He had 3 points. I had him at 8. Tied for number 13 with 2 points, Rocky Marciano. Raider had him at 9. Roy Jones had 2 points. I had him at 9. And finally, concluding the list, Floyd Mayweather Jr. I'm the only one who had him ranked, and I had him ranked at 10. Guys, before we close out this segment, is there anyone you wanted to touch on before we move on?
Well,
James?
I just want to. Oh, sorry.
No, I'm going it to James. Mute yourself.
Man, for some of those that were off, it's tough, man. A lot of these you can make a big time case for, but I think what I had a tough time was Archie Moore, not putting him higher, just given his resume and what he did in the ring as well. So that's especially the time frame from 35 to 63, almost 30 years of boxing. So that's I think probably going to be higher on my ballot next year. Spoiler alert. But that's all I got to say.
Raider, who do you got? Who you want to talk about?
I just want to say that this is one of the hardest lists I've ever had to do. Moving it around, I was like, man, I hope I don't screw this up. And it was kind of interesting to hear a lot of your guys that were high, Rich, didn't make it on there. And every one of these 15 fighters, you can make a easy case for a first ballot Hall of Famer into our thing. But it was just the rules. We had to narrow it down to 5. And, I like to get one from the common era, Manny Pacquiao. Shout out to him for just retiring and being, the most champions at most weight classes. That's, it's probably never going to be beat. Archie Moore, I had the same problem. The more I read about him, the more I want to put him up higher. Same with Joe Louis. It was very hard to keep Joe Louis off my 10. I mean, he was my first 2 alliterations. He was up pretty high, and he just kind of kept dropping as things moved around. And Rocky Marciano, undefeated, hard to keep him off a first ballot Hall of Famer list too. I mean, it was the hardest list I've had to do. I changed it probably about 5, 6, 7 times. I even texted you, Rich, and said, this is way too hard. I can't figure out, because they all deserved it, except for
stop. Okay. Yourself,
but next year, I guarantee you the next 5 are going to get in, I think so.
One guy I want to talk about is Joe Louis, who I had ranked number 2, who didn't make it this year. But Joe Louis is the longest reigning heavyweight champion in history. This guy was the Jackie Robinson before Jackie Robinson. Actually, there are photos of the two of them together. They crossed over in their respective sports at the same time. So heavyweights make the world go round. I had Muhammad number 1. I had to have Joe Louis at number 2. I have no shame in that. I think out of all these other guys, Mickey Walker has the greatest story. I love the Bearcat Wright story. He beat up a guy who was a foot taller and 100 pounds heavier. I don't know if anyone on this list does something like that. So that is our list. Tell us what you think. We'll have next year we're going to do this and have another 5 inducted to the Brews and Boxing Hall of Fame. Everyone take a drink.
So who are our 5 first ballot ones?
No. Our 5 first ballots? Yes. Yeah. To our 5.
Ray
Robinson, Ali, Henry Armstrong, Harry Greb, Sam Langford. Bottoms up, boys. All right. Let's move on with the show. All right. That does it this week for Brews and Boxing. Hope you guys had a nice Thanksgiving. It's our first week back since then. Raider Live, take us on home.
I will do that. I get to do some shout outs here. I want to shout out to all the great boxers that fought last Saturday. And I know you guys talked about them in the reviews. I got here a little late, but some amazing fighters. Kambosos, big shout out to you. You are now my guy. I love you. Also a sad Marlon Kelly happy trails shout out to my Uncle Mark. Fortunately passed away this week. Love you, Uncle Mark. And that's all I got.
James, what you got?
Well, if you want to listen to us, you can check us out on any podcast site. If you want to watch us, you can go to YouTube.com/Brews and Boxing and check out the video. Got a whole bunch of extra ones.
All right. Well, I guess that about does it for us. For Raider Live, for Judge Jimmy James, Filthy Rich. We'll catch you next week.